Now that we have a link for the Infura API, we're going to install a module or two and then get started with our deployment script. We're going to first flip on over to our terminal and install one module that's going to help us in creating a provider that will connect to the Infura network. We'll talk about exactly what this package is doing in a moment, but first let's start off the installation process. Once again, I'm inside of my inbox directory, and I'm going to run npm install --save truffle hd wallet provider, like so. And let me zoom in so we see that entire statement on one line. So truffle hd wallet provider. And we'll let that do its thing. All right, so back over to our diagram. Let's get a better sense of exactly what that module is doing for us. So we were just looking at this diagram a moment ago, and we had said several times now that the provider is how our Web3 instance talks to some particular network. We just installed a special provider that allows us to not only connect to some outside API or some outside node, but it also allows us to simultaneously unlock an account. So remember before, when we made use of the Ganache CLI just a moment ago inside of our test file, we had a very easy time setting up the provider. We just said ganache.provider, and that instantly allowed us to connect to this local test network and also unlocked a couple of accounts for us. This time around, we have to set up this provider manually. And when we set up the provider, we need to specify exactly what network we want to connect to. And we also need to use it to somehow unlock an account that will be used for all the different deployment requests that we make. So that's why we are installing this module. The Truffle HD wallet provider is going to be this part right here. It's going to allow us to connect to the Rinkeby network hosted through Infura, and it's going to simultaneously, and more importantly, allow us to very easily unlock an account to use. So let's flip back over to our code editor, and we're going to get started with our deployment script. Inside of my root project directory, I'm going to make a new file called deploy.js. At the very top, we're going to import a couple of different modules. First, we will require in that HD wallet provider. So I'll call it HD wallet provider. And that's going to come from truffle HD wallet, HD wallet provider. Next, we will require in Web3. Remember that this is going to be the Web3 constructor, so we've got a capital W here. And then finally, we're also going to import in our interface and our bytecode from our compile script. So we'll get interface and bytecode, and we're going to require that from compile, like so. Notice that we are now in the same directory as the compile file, which is why we're using only the one dot here when we require that file in. All right, now here's the fun part. So the next part, we're going to set up this HD wallet provider. Again, remember it's going to simultaneously specify which account we want to unlock and use as a source of ether for deploying our contract. And it's also going to specify what outside API or what outside node we are going to connect to. So we're going to say const provider is new HD wallet provider. And then we're going to pass in two separate arguments. The first argument to this function is going to be our account mnemonic. Remember, the account mnemonic allows us to derive both the public key and the private key. So with the mnemonic alone, we can get total access to our account through this HD wallet provider. Now, hopefully you have written down your mnemonic as we spoke about several videos ago. So I'm going to paste my mnemonic in here. So I'm going to paste it like so. So here's my account mnemonic. If you don't have your mnemonic, if you've completely forgotten it, that is okay. It means you have to go through a little bit of extra effort. If you have lost your mnemonic, then I encourage you to go back to the previous video where we reinstalled MetaMask and donated some coins to that account. So I encourage you to go back there and get a new account. Make sure you write down the mnemonic this time, and make sure you contribute some ether through the Rinkeby test faucet. The second argument to the HD wallet provider, and I'm going to make sure I put a comma at the very end of the line over here. So there's my comma. The second argument right here is going to be a link or a URL of what network we want to connect to. So this is where we need to specify our Infura link. In this case, we want to attempt to deploy our contract to the xbte test network right here, because that is where we have some number of ether tokens right now. So I'm going to copy the link right here. I'll flip back over to my code editor, and I'll pass this in as the second argument. Again, please, please, please make sure you get a comma after the account mnemonic on the line above it. So it should be our mnemonic, a comma, and then the link that we want to connect to when we attempt to deploy our contract. And then finally, underneath our provider, we're going to say const web3 is new web3, and we're going to pass the provider in. So this step right here should look a little bit familiar from when we were setting up our tests. This is going to take our provider, it's going to pass it to the web3 constructor, and we're going to get out an instance of web3. Now this instance of web3 right here is completely enabled for the xbte network. We have unlocked an account, so we have a source of ether, and we have specified what network the web3 instance needs to connect to. So we can use this web3 instance to interact with the test network in any way or shape or form we want. We can use it to send ether, we can use it to deploy contracts, we can use it to update contracts, whatever we want to do. Let's take a break right here. When we come back in the next video, we're going to use this web3 instance to actually deploy our contract, and we should be able to run our deploy script at that time and see how it's doing. So quick break, and we'll take care of that in the next video.